Molly oversees and lives at Ilsan, Holt's residential facility for over 250,000 special needs Koreans. That Harry and Bertha made it part of their mission to care for and love those Korean children who would not be adopted is just one testament to their remarkable vision. That Molly has continued that vision and given her life to these children and adults is, well, remarkable. I had the extraordinary privilege of meeting Molly last summer while on the Holt adoptee summer tour, and when my parents and I traveled to Korea last month, we visited with Molly at her home in Ilsan. And as we sat at her table and drank tea, she made us feel so welcome, as if we were in fact members of her family and we just dropped by for a visit. And in that moment I thought, there are thousands and thousands of adoptees, but there is just one Molly, and she is just a tremendous human being. The second person I'd like to recognize is Dr. David Kim. As many of you know, Dr. Kim was a cornerstone in the founding and running of Holt. He worked side by side with Harry and Bertha. Just like today, the success of Holt and adoption agencies around the world depends on the cooperation and shared vision of people in the sending countries. No agency can work in a sending country without the guidance and partnership of people from there. Dr. Kim was among the very first and the most instrumental. But think for a second of the context in which he worked with the Holts. It was shortly after the end of the war, when biracial Korean children were typically shunned, and orphans as a whole had no foothold or voice in society. Today, in the multicultural and diverse socioeconomic world we live in, we are expected to accept everyone. That wasn't the case in the 1950s. So without Dr. Kim's work and unquantifiable contributions, international adoption would most certainly not be what it is today. And finally, I'd like to highlight Dr. Byung-Kuk Cho. Dr. Cho, for some of you who may not know, she's like the combination Dr. Spock, Mother Teresa of Korean orphans. She was a trailblazer in every sense. She graduated from medical school in 1958 at a time when there were few female physicians in the world and even fewer in Korea. Dr. Cho faced enormous challenges and inequities in the face of her male colleagues. Her peers also frequently questioned her choice to care for orphans, which was not seen as a valuable area of medicine. And yet she continued to not only provide life-saving care to children, she became a vocal supporter of children and adoption, again at a time when this did not endear her to people, but set her apart. For me, Dr. Cho holds a special place in my heart because she was the first, and I believed only person from the first 9.5 months of my life who had any contact with me that I would ever meet. When I was in Korea over the summer and we reviewed my records, there in her neat writing was her signature, showing she'd examined me 4 times before I came to the United States. I was under no illusions, of course, that she, remembered me among the thousands of babies she'd cared for, but I found such comfort in knowing that she bore witness to my early life. I encourage you all to look at your records and look for that signature, by the way. So, bearing in mind that it is truly impossible to adequately thank these 3 people in a few paragraphs, please rise and give them a hand. I was left on the doorstep of a Mr. Kim, which makes it very easy to find him, by the way, when I was 3 days old with no identifying information. When I traveled back to Korea for the first time last summer, I hoped that Holt might have some current information regarding my foster mother, who, if she were alive, would be 87. She cared for me in her home for 9 months. Holt was unable to find her or even confirm whether she was living. But when I got home, I couldn't entirely let it go. So I went back to Holt and asked if they could just take one last pass, and 3 weeks later I received a call. They found her. She's alive and now 88 and was ready to welcome me and my parents. So last month my mom and dad and I traveled back to Korea to meet her in her home, and it was extraordinary. This is just one of many examples among the many we've heard over the past few days where the story takes a turn one can't expect. We've had the privilege of hearing exceptional stories from exceptional people who do exceptional things. Now here's the pitch for adoptees. Please join Adoptees for Children. The organization is crucial in advocating for adoption today. In the maelstrom and madness of my work, when I sometimes need a boost, I like to go to the Adoptees for Children website and read people's bios. Because for me, it's one of the most life-affirming and uplifting things you'll find on the internet. When you read the bio of someone like Stephen Morrison, Susan Cox, Kim Brown, Will Dantzler, and so many others, you will be proud and humbled and amazed of how far we have traveled and how far we have come.